All right, geographic data and spatial concepts. So how do we collect data geographically, and how do we explain the effects and decisions based on that data? It's kind of what we're looking at. First off, and this is where you want to write some notes. You don't got to write this word down word for word. It is field work, all right? You go out and you observe stuff. One of the great examples of field work in a modern sense is, have you guys ever seen the cars that Google uses to basically do the 360-degree videotaping imagery that they use for road systems? That is field work. But it's also the same light as if we would go out to the parking lot and observe where everybody works. Not where everybody works, where everybody parks. It would also be the same if you would go door to door, say for the census, and be like, hey, you know, how many people live here? What's your job? And what's your ethnic background? All of that is field work, man. You can see this little, this is Morgan Freeman. He's like, hello there, person, you know, shaking everybody's hand. That is field work too. Observations, whether it's visual, auditory, that's all field work. You know, a collection of music from around the world, that's field work. I mentioned the census, you know, mandated by the Constitution. It's an example of an organization doing field work. Have you guys ever been down by a river and you're down by the slide that goes down, the concrete slide, and that has a little kind of streamy grass area that goes in the river? Right across from that is a USGS data spot where it measures the flow of the river, what's going on there and everything. That is data collection, all right? Just a little bit more about the census. You know, it shows, it's for voting. It's how we divide out the congressional seats, also for public funding, for schools, law enforcement, highway, infrastructure. All of those things can be kind of done by the census. If you want to start a business in a town, are you going to go to a town where the population is going down or the population is going up? We also got geospatial technologies. Don't write all of those down. We got a slide for each of those. These are used by businesses. They're used in sports. You know, all of these things like start to use these are using geospatial technologies nowadays. All right, so one, we got GIS, Geographic Information Systems. It's a computer software system that collects data, analyzes data, and then it can overlay it in different ways to look at it. They can be thematic, physical, crime data, effects of pollution, urban planning. What we use this a lot for, especially in Floyd County, this is used by farmers as they use that satellite to pinpoint where they're at in their field. They use a form of geographic information systems to like make sure that it's collecting all the data and doing it the way that we want it to be used. Here's an example when it comes for violent crime. This is for what city? Oh, I forget right now, but it's from 2008 and it's divided by precinct. So it lays out what all these different violent crime happens. We also got GPS. Satellites orbit the Earth, communicate, gives us absolute location. You know, this is what we use on our phones and our cars. All that is the satellite. We also have aerial photography. This both comes from a satellite, but it can be in planes, can be in helicopters. Think about huge cities that have a helicopter that says, hey, you know, the I-95 is backed up along the way. That's that kind of stuff. Think about drone usage. You know, drone technology is significant in this thing. Here's a great example of it. I wish I had a picture of a before or after for the derecho that just happened. Tennessee, flood victims. From boom to this. Easy way to figure out the amount of stuff that's done. And I want to say for the derecho, one of the ways that they tracked in some of the counties, saw what the damage was done to farmland, is they used drone flyovers to see what it was like. All right, remote sensing. Cameras or other sensors mounted in aircrafts and satellites orbit the Earth, above the atmosphere to collect digital images of the Earth. Environmental changes, weather, cloud pollution that's going on in different countries. All of those things are remote sensing. Here's one example. North Korean camps. You know, they took a satellite picture and then they give it to an analyst who's trying to figure out what all of these different things are in this area. North Korea, communist country, you know, trying to figure out what's going on in this area. One of the most famous examples, U.S. history for remote sensing. Not remote sensing because we did not have a satellite at that time. So totally forget about that idea. You know, this is how we look at North Korea, Pakistan, Iran, figuring out if they have like nuclear weapons. This is something that we do to find that. Now, some spatial concepts, all right? The spatial perspective, thinking like a geographer. Go ahead and write down thinking like a geographer. We figure out the what, the where. We try to think about the why there. We think about the why we would care about that. And then we think about the patterns, all right? Moving to a new house. Where is it at? Why'd you move there? A new job. Why care? Because, you know, that's going to determine like the neighborhood, who lives there, what kind of work they do, you know, how they treat their houses, you know, how much money they're going to spend in that neighborhood, and then the patterns there. Mrs. Pittman Works got voted onto the city council. One of the things that the city council is trying to do is to provide like a couple of things. One, try to get more houses that people could rent, but then secondly, also fill in kind of like a middle kind of level income for housing that we need in this area. Why? Because then that helps brings up the rest of the community. The what is the place? You describe the place. You have sense of place, the cultural landscape, the placelessness. Sense of place is, you know, like this is a picture of Venice, right? They have a lot of water. They got canal systems. You know, they have the ocean come up. Cultural landscape in the built environment. This is how the humans have impacted it. You know, that's a picture of the Eiffel Tower. Think about our road systems. Think about, you know, like our waterways. We've greatly changed those by building in them. The placelessness, you know, that rarely actually happens. A location with no sense of place, most people do it. The where. That's the absolute versus the relative. Toponym, this is just a name, you know. Think about like the Badlands in South Dakota. You know, that toponym gives it reflects like how people viewed that area, but also gives it like a little bit of an idea. You also got the site, physical landscape, the environmental features, the weather that it would have on it. Patterns. All right, we've already kind of talked about this a little bit. Clustering, dispersal, distribution. You know, think about like in Charles City, how houses are located on, say, different streets, the spacing they have apart, that's that. But the farther outside of Charles City you get, the pattern, the dispersal gets more and more and more far apart. We got regionalization, all right, which gives to like different things. Process geographers use to divide, categorize small areas for analysis. We will get more in depth into this, all right. You know, if you think about Asia, one continent, you have Siberia, Central Asia, East Asia, and then the subcontinent of India as South Asia. You know, so that's that. What I want you guys to do quickly, in America, how many regions can you guys name? You know, write that down. That's going to be something that I can ask you guys about when you come back to class. How many regions do we actually have in America? Why there? Why we care? Spatial interactions, connections, contacts, movements, and the flow of things between places. What geographic concepts do you use to explain connectedness or lack thereof? One, we got distance decay, and the second is time-space compression. How much contact do I have with another teacher in, Texas, not a lot. Farther away I am, the less contact I have. How much contact do I have with somebody in West Des Moines? Some I have. I know some people in social studies. How much contact do I have with social studies teachers in Waverly? A little bit more, although I don't like doing it because it's Waverly. How much contact do I have with Mr. Downing and Mrs. Downing? Tons. My distance is closer. The farther away I am, I have more decay. It can be also physical barriers and cultural barriers that lead to this distance decay. Time-space compression. And the same right that I might not contact a teacher in Texas due to technology, I can do it right away if I want, all right? Increased technology and transportation has made the time-space compression a lot quicker. Globalization, I have a mask that I use for wrestling, right? I ordered that from a woman in Mexico on Etsy. Increase of a sense of accessibility and connectivity that we have, even though distance is going farther away. Probably a great example of that is how long does it take to get from one side to another? All right, best average speed a horse-drawn coach or sailing ship was 10 miles per hour. To go across the Atlantic, like when the Pilgrims did it, we're talking like a 3-month voyage. By the 1850s, 1930s, their average pace of a steamship is 38 miles per hour. So they got a 400% increase. By the time we get to aircraft, we're talking from, say, 40 miles per hour to 400. To the time that we get passenger jets, we're talking 700 miles per hour, right? It's an extremely different process. Diffusion, process by which a characteristic spreads. You got expansion diffusion and relocation diffusion. Expansion diffusion is as people go to different spots, and these are all part of cultural diffusion, they spread it out. Then you got relocation diffusion. Here, expansion comes from one central point and spreads out. Relocation is that one central point, somebody goes to another point, way off camera, and adds it to what they're doing. Population density. Here's how we can look at patterns and then overlay them with different stuff. Population density of China, the purple being some of the highest stuff that they have. Then we add into it pollution in China. See how there are similarities between the amount of population and the amount of pollution. I mean, you can actually see this bit that comes out here, this bit that comes out to almost right there too, all right? But it's shrink down a little bit. Here's an interesting aspect when we think about COVID. Before COVID, during COVID. I have some cousins that live in California. They said amazing stuff about how the air has changed. And that is that. Have a great one.